Are you trying to navigate this crazy thing called life? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to Unraveling with Rayne. Hey guys, welcome. Today we've got Diane Borders, author, speaker, and you were a microbiologist, correct?
Yes, I was.
Awesome,
yes.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, no problem. So we've got a lot to dig into.
We do.
Like I told you before I started recording, I did a little bit of homework and I was like, whoa, there's a lot here. So
there is.
Hopefully you can give us a little bit guidance on what you do. And first, I'd love to talk about how you got to this place.
Okay, so I got here kicking and fighting all the way. Wasn't what I intended for my life.
Yeah.
You know, you always have all these plans of what you're going to do with your life, and then life happens and you have to adjust. So for us, my husband and I, we've been together since I was 14 and he was 16. And so got married, had 3 wonderful children, living the dream. I was a microbiologist, and our oldest child became sick instantly, like you flipped a switch, and he wasn't there anymore. And we started down the pathway of mental illness. And so caused a shift in everything the family did. Everything that we pursued, it all changed. And so it wasn't a planned journey, but it was a really a great journey, because at the end of it, he's recovered and doing wonderful. And so I hope that gives a lot of people hope.
Yeah.
So if they're in mental health struggles, don't give up.
Yeah.
There's some great science behind the methylation pathway and the genetics of that. So
nice.
Don't give up hope. If you're at the end of your ropes, hang in there.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Just so everybody knows, we do have a means of looking at your comments. Thanks to Miss Diane, she saved the day. So as we're talking and as she's explaining things to us, feel free to comment, and we will try to check in with you guys and make sure that we are answering questions as they come in. So looking at your story, you've brought your book in today.
Right.
And it looks like one heck of a book. My goodness. So a lot of stuff transpired before this book was written. And so give us a little bit of information on exactly what you wrote in this book and the highlights of the journey along the way. I know that there's so much to really look at, but if you could just give us, the highlights of it.
So the way the book came about, my husband and I have 3 children, and it was our oldest child that became ill with mental illness. And after the recovery was done, it was my middle child that asked me to write the book.
Really?
Yeah, he said, you've got to write down this story because I have 3 children, and what if you're gone and this starts to happen to them? What did you do? I won't know what you did. So you have to write it all down. And so that's why the book came about, was my middle son's request to write this story of our journey.
Yeah.
It was hard on the family. Anybody who goes through mental illness, it's a tough struggle for the family, especially siblings. It was hard on the other 2 children. Post-traumatic stress disorder, getting counseling after to try to process what you went through. And but my child that became sick age of 14, just gone.
So he's the oldest.
He's the oldest.
So that they're younger.
Yeah.
So that's a huge impact on them.
There were 5 years between the oldest and the youngest. So we had them really quick. So they're all, really not too far apart in age, but it was the oldest one that became sick. And, all the attention shifts in the family to that sick one. And you really do lose a lot that you could have shared with your other children when the family is caught up in the turmoil of the sick child. And that could even be true for an adult, the mom and dads. A lot of children are caught up in mom's mental illness or dad's mental illness and how it rocks the family's foundation. And so, like I said, we were 14 years in with our oldest. He was brilliant. He was doing college math in 8th grade. He wanted to go to MIT, and then all of a sudden, you know, like I said, it was like you flipped a switch, and an alien took over his body. You know, he just was not anybody we recognized anymore.
So was it just like when he woke up, or just like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it was. And I remember saying out loud, "It's almost like an alien took over his body." And who is this child? It was, and I was a stay-at-home mom.
Mm-hmm.
I was home for 14 years,
Okay.
and so I felt like I really knew my children,
Yeah.
inside and out, and we had a really great relationship. And so for me, it was just really apparent when you're that invested in him. You can tell, you know, when stuff is off, and you know, self-mutilating, writing crazy stuff, and so, you know, that was the beginning of our journey, and it went on for 2 decades and escalated over time. And the psychiatric community, they don't like to put labels on children, which is good, because once you've got that label, it's hard to take that label away. And so they were really conservative in what they diagnosed him with over the 17 years.
Yeah.
So we went through major depression, bipolar schizoaffective, schizophrenia, and then paranoid schizophrenia. So we went through all the gamut of that as he kept escalating in his illness.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, tried every drug on the market. It would all work for a little while. I remember thinking, oh, if we just get a prescription, he'll take this prescription and it'll all be over and everything will be fine. And that was my me not understanding mental illness and the struggle.
How did you even come to terms with that? You know what I mean? Like, because we've got a child who's struggling with some medical issues, and I kind of feel the same way. I think, if we could just find the thing
that pill
that's going to do it,
right,
then life will, like you said,
it'll go back to normal. Mm-hmm.
But coming to terms with the new normal is really, really hard.
It was really hard, right. We were, like I said, 17 years. I was mad at God. I'm not going to lie. I was pretty mad at him. We had a lot of people always praying for us, and I got to a point where I remember telling my husband, I don't want to hear one more prayer for his healing, because God's not deaf, and if he was going to heal him, he would do it. I mean, I started to get really upset because it was really tearing the family apart, you know, the fabric of the family. And I just didn't understand. it. And it causes a lot of pain and resentment, and the other 2 children lost a lot that they could have enjoyed versus the trauma that everybody went through. So the book goes through his life, his his birth up through when he got ill, and then I took everybody through our 17 years. And then after I recovered him from schizophrenia, then I wrote how I did it. So the last half is how I did it. The first half is his journey, and the last half is now you can go do it too. I'm not a rocket scientist. I'm not a PhD. I'm not an MD. I'm not a doctor. I was just a mom who needed to recover her child. Because nothing was working.
As I say, I think that's enough. I was just a mom.
I was just a mom
who wanted to help her kid.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and in his mental illness, you know, he, what they do is they can push family members away and loved ones away by the things they say and do. And I was the last one really standing, and they're holding on. And the voices and the demons that he heard from, their goal was to kill me. You know, do terrible things to me and dismember my body. And so I remember at one point when he got out of Medical Lake, as sick as he went in, that it was either going to be I would die and leave my children with no mother, or he would die. And so it was kind of somebody was going to die in this situation. And in the mental health field, there's really no help for families stuck in that. We don't really have a system that can step in to help us. So unless they harm somebody or they harm themselves, then they'll step in, but nobody wants to go there. We need to fix the system so we're not waiting for them to do something horrible or have something horrible done to them.
So what would have been helpful to your family in that process? Like, what kind of support do you think would have been?
More hospitalizations. We had 7 in the 17 years. The last one was at Medical Lake. He went in February and got out in November, but he got out as sick as he went in.
Yeah.
So that was the longest one, but usually it's a week, maybe 2 weeks, sometimes only 2 days. And what they would do is put you in and change your meds tweak your meds a bit and then let you back out. Not that you were well, but that was it for the care. And so I would say we had 7 hospitalizations. We probably could have used 14.
Yeah.
Almost like 1 a year.
Yeah.
He was really responsive initially to the drugs, and then they quickly wore off. And then we would have to adjust them again. And so maybe 2 years, if we were lucky, the drugs would hold on to what they were kind of helping with. But as you can tell through his escalation to schizophrenia, it didn't stop the progression.
Yeah.
It didn't keep anything from happening. It still progressed on.
Is that pretty typical of people with schizophrenia, for them to have their medications adjusted?
I think that's pretty common across the board. And the way that the psychiatric team explained it to me was that your brain kind of builds up a tolerance to the medication, and they'll put you in and tweak your dose, take something out, put something in, mess with the dose, and then let you go to see if the meds can maybe help in this situation. So we went through, I think, almost every med there was, in and out, trying different combinations, different shots. There's injections, there's all kinds of stuff we've tried. So, that's kind of what I saw the hospital for, was drug management. And, you can't blame them. Their hands are tied by the laws. The laws are, until they're a danger to themselves or others, you can't force hospitalization. So, again, that leaves the family to figure it out on their own.
Sure.
And muddle through it by themselves.
Yeah, that sounds like a really, really challenging situation to try to figure out. I mean, without, there has to be, I feel like there should be a system, like, just for the family support aspect.
Yes,
obviously we want to get the diagnosis and the treatments on the right track too, but the family support,
Right, right before they let our son out of Medical Lake, my daughter and I went to a NAMI class. It was called Family to Family, and it was for the families of the mentally ill. And that was pretty great. It was once a week for like 12 weeks. And they taught us all about schizophrenia and severe mental illness and how to behave and talk and de-escalate. And that was really helpful. Yeah. I remember there was one class we weren't going to sit through, and it was called Communications. And I thought, I don't need a communications class. I know how to talk to him. And so my daughter and I skipped that class, and we went out and got pizza. And then we went the next week, and guess what the class was? Communications. And I was like, okay, maybe I need to learn about communications. And it was actually the best class out of all 12.
Really?
And because I, in order to survive it, I stuffed everything. I stuffed the words, I stuffed the fear, because I felt like if I said stuff, I would spin them up worse. And so I was a stuffer. And so that's not good for your health physically.
Yeah.
And it wasn't truthful to him to let him know what he was doing to the family. And so that wasn't very useful. It made me feel like I was de-escalating things, but it wasn't the best thing to do. And they had an exercise where half the class were schizophrenics, and they read off of a card, and they just read the words. Well, actually, we read the words, and so my daughter portrayed the schizophrenic, and a whole bunch of us sat behind her, and we had a card, and we just read this paragraph over and over and over. And then she sat on the chair with us reading this paragraph to her, and a teacher was trying to tell her what to do. Draw this circle. Now put a line across the top of the circle. All the while we're talking down on her this canned paragraph.
Yeah.
And she was stunned that she couldn't hear the teacher and do it.
Yeah.
Just simple, draw a circle. Because we were talking down at her, she couldn't stop the voices and learn and do the steps.
Yeah.
And that was really profound to her, because she realized what her brother was trying to get through the fog of the voices to hear somebody and even have a conversation.
Yeah.
So that was the communications class. So we came out learning a lot and having a lot more empathy for the mentally ill person.
Right.
Putting ourselves in what they were going through, and it's a pretty amazing class. So if anybody has mental health struggles in the family, I would encourage them to contact NAMI.
Okay.
I don't know if they still do family to family, but it was really powerful for us. It was packed. There were all kinds of families from all socioeconomic classes. all struggling severely within the family, and really a great tool for the community.
Yeah, sounds like
if it's still available.
Yeah, definitely. So there is a little bit of support.
There is. And, everybody's got their doctors, and, so my son had a psychiatrist and a case manager and a meds nurse, and at one time he had like 3 case managers trying to manage him. Oh. So, everybody's kind of got a team. So it's not that they're not there.
Sure.
It's just the safety net around it's not there. Mm-hmm. When you really need it. There were so many times where we'd ring crisis response at 2 a.m. and nobody would come to the door. So I just put him back in the car and we'd just go back home. So you really, as a family going through it, you feel all alone. You feel pretty isolated.
Yeah.
And with the stigma of mental illness, a lot of people don't talk about it.
Yes.
So part of my book was to tell people it's okay. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's nothing that we caused. Mm-hmm. And if we don't talk about it, then nobody else will learn and grow from what we've experienced.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I am 100% behind that.
So,
100%.
Yeah, so I teach classes every month telling our story and explaining what methylation is, and if somebody wants to get tested for it, here's your options and here's what you get.
Right.
So that other people can do what I did.
Yeah, so methylation is what helped your son come out of schizophrenia?
Right. So when we got him out of Medical Lake, we immediately had him back at Cadillac ER because he threatened to kill me again. And so we had him in the hospital, and there were no beds anywhere. And the nurse put a security outside of our door in the ER because there were no beds, but they had heard him threaten to bludgeon me with a baseball bat. And so there's security outside the door, but there's no bed. So I was going to be taking him home with me. And the case manager popped in, and she said, maybe he's a candidate for Clozaril. It's a drug. And I'm like, here we are 17 years in. I've never heard of that drug. What's that drug? And they said it was a drug from the 70s that was really the number 1 drug for schizophrenics. Mm-hmm. And would we be willing to do it? And I'm like, we've been willing to do every other drug. Yeah, we'll do it. But it's really, I think it's expensive. You have to draw your blood every month, and everybody looks at your blood work. It goes through all kinds of government groups' hands, and they review your blood work. Initially it's every week, and then it's every other week, and then if you're stable, it's once a month for as long as you're on the drug. And I said, yeah, we'll do it. And so I took him home, and the case manager ran it to ground, and he was approved for Clozaril. And so we were told that they didn't know if it would work, but sometimes it stops addiction. And at the same time that he was mentally ill, he was also alcoholic. So he would drink a ton of alcohol just to black out. So his purpose was to drink and black out. And that was the only way that he could quiet the voices. If he was blacked out, there weren't any voices. So his goal was just to drink and black out.
Yeah.
And with Clozaril, within 3 days, it turned off the addiction center in his brain. And he didn't crave alcohol anymore after that, never has had another drink.
Really?
So when he dried out from alcoholism, I was able to approach him and ask him if he would test genetically his methylation pathway with me. And we could see if he was mutated in his brain neurotransmitters. And he said, yeah. So, without Clozaril, I don't know if any of this would have happened, because if you can't get them off of alcohol and willing to work with nutrients, I don't know how you really get compliance across the board to do testing or the kind of behaviors you need to try to start to get well. So it's kind of a catch-22. We know about methylation. We can test for it. But there's a couple problems. Do you have the finances to buy the supplements? Because they're not covered by insurance, so it's all out of pocket. The genetics test is not too expensive anymore, so you can get your genetics tested pretty easily. It can be analyzed, and your genes on the pathway that are maybe at risk for not making their enzymes very well, you can get on nutrients to help those enzymes be made and support that gene. But will they comply? Will they? Can you afford it, and will they comply? Are the biggest hurdles for trying to do the natural way. So it's all nutrient based. It's all nutrient driven. No pharmaceuticals.
Okay. So the process, so you go in, you get your genetic testing done, and so methylation is in regards to a particular gene, or is that just the process of adjusting them?
Right. So when you do, I usually recommend right now Ancestry.com.
Okay.
In August of 2017, they put in quite a few methylation genes into their spit test kit, where 23andMe took quite a few methylation genes out. So it used to be I would tell people, go get 23andMe, and Ancestry is not so good. But then last August, they did a flip-flop. Oh. And now it's like Ancestry is better than 23andMe.
I know what I said.
Because everything's always changing. And so, you get your, you do a spit test kit.
Okay.
You get your raw data back, and unfortunately with Ancestry, you cannot upload it into analyzing software. It's all coded for 23andMe.
Oh, okay.
So that's all a manual search and find for mutations. So it's a lot more manual. But 23andMe was great because you put it in all these analyzing databases and you saw your mutations.
It just gave them to you there.
Yeah. So what I did with my son when I knew they were letting him out of Medical Lake, I had been following Dr. Amy Yasko's methylation work.
Right.
And she started looking at methylation in 1995. And there wasn't really anything on the internet, but I ran across her data, and she had a list of illnesses tied to methylation. And when I was looking on the list, there was schizophrenia, and there was multiple sclerosis, which I have a diagnosis for that. But there was depression and arthritis and heart issues and Parkinson's. There were all kinds of diseases that can come off of really poor methylation. And I remember seeing that list and thinking, we can't have genetic mutations. That seems really severe. And I set it aside. But when I got the data back and started looking into it, I realized, actually, we do have a lot of methylation gene mutations, and we're double mutated on every gene that controls our dopamine and serotonin and norepinephrine and epinephrine.
Okay.
So every single brain neurotransmitter, SNP, was double mutated for our family.
Oh, wow.
And so clearance of dopamine and norepinephrine and epinephrine is not happening.
Yeah.
And so dopamine's really piling up. You get a pile up of dopamine and you start getting the voices and hallucinations and delusions. And so once we got those draining, his symptoms slowly slid away. We worked on the downstream genes first, one at a time, and then we went up on the primary wheels and worked on them. And so it's all in downstream primary wheels. And
so it is a downstream gene.
I wish I would have brought the picture. So the pathway is 5 biochemical wheels that come together.
Okay.
And then downstream from those wheels are quite a few other different genes that can be affected.
Okay.
And so all your brain neurotransmitters are down in this downstream region.
Okay.
And so what we want to do is support them with nutrients, get everything clearing, move the dopamine and norepinephrine out. And then we come up and work on the primary wheels, get them spinning better, making their intermediaries better. Everything floods downstream, but that's okay now because it's not going to get clogged up. It's going to keep on being cleared out.
Okay.
And so one at a time, we layered in nutrients over 2 years.
Wow.
And, we never went backwards. We never had another catastrophe. We never had another inpatient. Every month was just better than the month before.
Really?
Yeah, and the hallucinations went away, and then the delusions went away. And we were at the 2-year mark when the voices quit. And that's been, we started in 2012, and the voices stopped in 2014. And so at first I remember thinking, this is too good to be true.
Right?
It's going to come back. And so far we've had nothing, we've had no backward movement.
I can't imagine what that was like for him, that moment when he's like, wait a minute.
Nothing's it's pretty amazing. So he's on about 17 nutrients, so it's not cheap.
Yeah.
So if a family member doesn't have the finances, that's the part that breaks my heart. We can know where are you mutated, and you can get the test, but do you have the finances to purchase the supplements that you need for your recovery?
So maybe I didn't understand the literature I was looking at, but now there's a process of actually switching and opening those genes or those pathways,
turning,
right?
Turning things on and off, right?
Yeah.
Right. So on the methylation pathway, methyl groups, a CH3 molecule, those are what turn on and off function on this pathway, all over the pathway.
Okay.
So we need methyl groups. And but the problem is people who have COMT genes and VDR-TAC mutations, it's those two genes that really affect how well you can clear and handle methyl.
Okay.
And so a lot of people will get put on like Deplin or methyl B9 or methyl B12.
Okay.
There's all kinds of SAMe. There's all kinds of methyl donor supplements. And some people who have the COMT VDR-TAC gene, if you put them on methyl, you can make them worse.
Oh.
Unless you've got everything clearing, you have to be really careful with methyl donors.
Okay.
And so we don't go huge therapeutic doses. We stay low dosing and slowly move the dose up. Instead of starting a huge dose and spinning people up potentially, we start low dose and slowly move it up. So so the methyl groups drive the methylation pathway. So we're all methylating. Every cell in our body's methylating. And we're doing it billions of times a second all day long. So, you want to be methylating well.
Yeah.
And so you can find areas that may be impacted by mutations. But it's not just your genetics.
Really?
So it's like a three-legged stool. So you've got your genetics, then you've got your pathogens. So working with your doctor, some of the things to work on is, have they cleared pathogens? Have they made sure you don't have Lyme?
Okay.
Have they ruled out virus and bacteria type issues or parasites? Has that stuff all been looked at? Those can be huge for your health. So working with your doctor and looking at those are really important. And then there's environmental legs. So what's your diet like? What's your stress level? Are you sleeping?
Yeah.
Do you have heavy metal toxicity? All of those things kind of come together. And if you then add in your genetics where you have a lot of methylation mutations, you're going to have a hard time with kind of like a perfect storm of pathogens and really bad environmental choices and then a really potentially compromised methylation pathway can create a perfect storm for you to have issues in your health.
Okay, so we have to look at everything.
Right, and that's why I always tell people, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a licensed certified doctor, work with your doctor all the way through. They're the ones that can draw blood work and watch your health as you go. And we did that. For my doctor and my son's doctor. Once we knew where he was mutated, I had a plan of these are the nutrients and we're going to do them one at a time in this order. I took the list to his psychiatric team and I said, now these are what I'm going to put him on. Do you have a problem with any of these nutrients?
Yeah.
Because I could pick something else. I could swap it.
Yeah.
And they looked at it and said, no, no problem.
How empowering as a mom trying to take care of your child. Like, I have a plan, and this is what I'm going to do.
Do you see a problem?
You're good, and we're good.
Yeah, I didn't want to do it in private, and hide it.
Yeah.
Because what I told them, I'm trying to get cell function improved. And they just kind of rolled their eyes and said, don't get your hopes up.
Sure.
Which I appreciated. And I told him, well, if I can't recover him at the cellular level, then I don't think I'll ever recover him.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's as far as you can
how far down, maybe mitochondrial work inside the cell. And so it was really great because they got to see him have no episodes since 2012.
What was their response to
that?
that?
When we were about 18 months in, his meds nurse said, well, maybe he never had schizophrenia to begin with.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, just like you. and then I walked away. I thought, that's pretty awesome because they saw him improve.
Yeah.
And they know exactly what we did.
Yeah.
And it wasn't anything pharmaceutical. When I did the methylation pathway work, I left his drugs alone. I didn't touch his medication because I knew I wouldn't get their buy-in.
Sure.
And my goal wasn't to get him off meds. At that point, I didn't care what med he took. He'd been trying them for 17 years and none of them worked. So I just decided I was just going to ignore him. And then I just, beside it, parallel, started adding in the nutrients over time. And so they never changed anything on their end, but as we layered his nutrients in, everything, all the symptoms quieted. Wow. So it was pretty powerful, and they got to watch it in action, which was pretty exciting.
as a physician, I'd be like, okay, where do I sign to get further research on this?
I think,
or
I asked
let me get somewhere.
I asked my doctor that that helps me with my MS how long he thought it would take for physicians, MDs, to be using methylation. He said 20 years.
Really?
So we're about 5 years in. So maybe in 15 more years it'll be more mainstream, and maybe you'll bring your baby home from the hospital and know their methylation areas that you could keep an eye on. Just because you have the mutations doesn't mean it's going to be an issue.
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to the environmental and pathogen leg. Have you looked at the whole picture? Have you addressed your diet? Are there things, alcohol, sugars, wheat, what do you have a sensitivity to? Have you isolated those out of your diet? Working all of that is really important.
I could be wrong, and you have a lot more years of experience with doctors than I do at this point. I'm working on 6 years hand in hand with those doctors, but I feel like they're just now coming from the whole picture approach.
Right. I'm seeing a lot of MDs with holistic practices lately, where they're trying to pull in like the oats testing and looking at your heavy metals, and they're starting to take a lot more of a natural nutrient look instead of just pharmaceuticals. What I found when I work with clients is, I always want to know, what prescriptions are you on? Because a lot of prescriptions will strip out nutrients from your body. Really? And if you don't know that, you don't know to get them back in. So an example is a statin drug. A lot of people are on statins for high cholesterol.
Right.
So if you don't know that statin drug is going to strip out CoQ10, then you don't add it back in. And then after a while, you get crippled up, and your muscles in your legs and all that, you hobble all up. And really, if you just would have known you need CoQ10, you could have saved yourself from that issue. So that's an important thing to look at as part of the whole picture, is what pharmaceuticals are you on and what nutrients is that pharmaceutical taking out of your system. Yeah. So you can get it back in.
Definitely. And I think it's also a huge thing for the patient themselves to take on, because they really have to think about it. Am I getting everything that I need in the appropriate dose and exercise, like you're saying, environment? It takes a lot of work sometimes.
It does. It takes a lot of work. And it's really funny. I say funny, but my son, now that he's feeling great, he has 5 trays, weekly, Monday, 7 days. He has 5 trays of 7 days, and it's like morning and dinner and lunch, and then he a couple times in the middle. He fills those trays every week and hands me a piece of paper with what he's going to run out of, and I need to get him ordered before he has to fill them again. And he's so committed to having those nutrients and not missing, because he doesn't want to go back.
Yeah, if I were him, I would be too. I'd be like, if this is what it takes, then this is what I'm going to do.
And what I do with my MS, it's quieted my symptoms too with my MS. Right. My lesions are still there, but my symptoms are quieted if I don't get too much methyl. If I get too much methyl, they flare. And so I've learned methyl's more of a poison for me than it is an aid. I pulse my supplements, so I'll take them really good for 3 weeks and then take a week off and let my system use up what may have piled up, and then I take them 3 weeks. And that's called pulsing. That's how I do it. But my son is too afraid to do that. He doesn't want to miss a day. He's like, what if?
Can you blame him?
No, I can't blame him. And I figure someday maybe he'll want to try pulsing. And it's really interesting. His psychiatric team is willing to start lowering his medication. And he used to, when he was at his worst, he was smoking 4 packs of cigarettes a day. And they told him, if you get down to half a pack, we'll start lowering your medication, because nicotine uses their same receptor as Clozaril. Oh, okay. And so it's funny, because he gets right down to not quite half a pack. And he's been there for years. He's afraid to have them start to lower. He's like, nothing's broke. Don't touch anything. Because what if I start to go downhill? What if? And so, you have to respect his wishes. And I'd love to see him try to start lowering them, but he's not up for that. Yeah. Kind of like he's not up for pulsing his nutrients.
He must have one heck of a, what's the right word, therapist or mental health team.
He has a wonderful team. He really does.
Because if you think about the stress, like you're saying, like he doesn't want to try that because he's afraid. Like that is a huge fear.
Yeah. I can't, and knowing what we came through, I don't blame him. Yeah. but what if he even felt better off of the psychiatric meds?
That's true.
Because they do kind of, I don't know what the right word is, but you kind of fog you up, you know.
I've had a few years where I went through different types of medications for anxiety and depression, and it really is. It's like walking in a cloud.
Yeah.
Like it's just like you're there,
and
but
imagine
you're not
how
there.
clearer you could be maybe not on them.
Yeah.
But you have to be ready. All of it's about being ready and being compliant, and having the money to buy the nutrients. My hope is someday that the insurance companies start reimbursing for supplements.
That would be amazing.
It would be really amazing, because I would say we probably spend $300 a month on his supplements.
Damn. Yeah. Well, it's either I think that if they just look at it from the approach of, we're compensating for these nutrients, but then we don't have to compensate for these hospitals and drugs and all these really super expensive things that they pay for. So fingers crossed.
I know. You never know.
That message might get there someday.
Yeah, I hope so.
Right.
Yeah. So, but it's been a wonderful road. It's. I wouldn't want to ever do it again. But on the other side, I'm able to tell our story and the journey, and maybe give people hope. Don't give up. Consider looking at the methylation pathway.
Yeah.
At Ancestry, the test is $99, but a lot of the times it's on sale for $69 or $59, and you get almost 700,000 genes that they look at.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then we go in and pull the subset of methylation genes out of that big raw data file.
Okay.
So I look at about 110 different gene SNPs.
That's still a lot.
Yeah, it's still a lot, but it's not 700,000. Yeah. So you get a huge data file, and I really like that data file. As I've seen as the years go by, the science and the researchers are always looking into our genetics now. There's all kinds of tests, even for psychiatric drugs. They'll do a test to see what's the best psych med for you by looking at your genetics. And they'll say, oh, not that drug because you're mutated right here.
Right.
Let's do this drug. And so they're already pulling genetics into the medical community. So, we're just, 6 years in from when I started, and I'm already seeing those kind of testing. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and I want to bring up a point that you made earlier about how sometimes just because your DNA or your genetics are mutated doesn't necessarily mean it's going to present itself.
Right, exactly.
So I think that's kind of it's really great that they're looking at those things and implementing them. But I think that prenatal side, that's where we get a little sticky on DNA testing and all of that.
Knowing their genetics coming out. And I know.
I think it should be more in the diagnostic process than the...
Yeah. I bet you, though, I'll be long gone. You'll probably be taking your children home knowing your genetics.
Yeah.
They'll probably know that. That's just part of the heel stick.
Sure.
Decades down the road, it'll be the norm. But a lot of people are really nervous about doing the testing. They don't want it tracked back to them. We had an instance where my middle son, he has MTHFR, and an insurance company was going to, I think, charge him 2 or 3 times the normal rate because he had MTHFR.
Oh, I didn't even think about insurance purposes.
And so he had to fight it. When the insurance company contacts the doctor before they insure you, it's just in the medical records because the doctor did the blood test, and he had to fight to get insurance coverage, and that was just MTHFR. So, they got to get all that worked out. So I always tell people in my classes, I say, if you want to get a test, go to the library, order it from the library computer, and use your friend's credit card, and then mail it to another friend's house. And nobody can find you, and they don't know who's doing the spit test kit. Cover your ground like that if you're nervous about that.
I have heard of a couple people that are like, I don't know.
It's really common to have that worry, not wanting that out in... anywhere. But when you order the test kit, you're assigned a string of numbers, and when you send the kit in, you're just this number string.
Yeah, which is strange because I didn't really think about that. Thinking about getting my DNA tested, I was just like, oh yeah, that's what you do, and then you send it in and you get it back, and then I'm like, maybe I should be worried about... No,
I know. And then another thing that I've had happen is they're coming to look at their methylation, and they do the DNA test, and then they find out, oh, their dad's not their dad.
Oh.
Yeah, so I've had that happen where it's like, ooh.
Well,
wasn't looking for that.
There's a whole nother bag of goodies to look at.
So, I know. So let's just make it even more complicated.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, and don't they tell you, like, the ancestry, like, where you came from and stuff as well?
Yes, they do, and that's really fun.
Yeah, and unless somebody told you were from somewhere else, and you're like,
Yeah.
wait a minute.
Yeah, I know. It's like, I thought I was this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just find out you're a whole new person.
Yeah, so, I find it fascinating, but, a lot of skeletons in the closet can come out.
Yeah.
But protect yourself insurance-wise.
Yeah. I did not even
It's going to be a brave new world with this genetics coming out into the community. But it was powerful. I think the best thing about the methylation pathway is it lends itself to nutrient support for recovery.
Yeah.
It's been amazing. I've helped a lot of people that have never felt better as they start to layer stuff in. And again, it's one thing at a time.
Sure.
Low dose. And so you wait for 6 weeks and, you're able to tell, can you tolerate that supplement? And that sounds silly. But a lot of people take zinc and get really sick.
Really?
Yeah, it's one of the common ones where people feel really bad. And even low doses or skipping days, they still can't do zinc. And so, you start on one thing and you wait 4 to 6 weeks and you lower the dose or cut it in half or quarters or skip days to see, if you can tolerate that item.
Do you find that people get impatient with the process?
Yeah.
I mean, they want to just take it and be good now.
Yes,
know?
exactly.
Right?
That is really hard. It's really hard. In fact, I had one gentleman who was feeling so good. He was like 8 or 9 months in, and he took like 5 things. And he came to one of my work groups. He goes, I'm not feeling very good. And I said, well, what did you just start? And he goes, well, I started these 5 items. I'm like, but it's supposed to be one at a time. So he had to take those 5 out and then go back to adding in one. Because at least that way you know what that nutrient does to you. Yeah. What does it make you feel like? And so if, it's just a great way to know, okay, this one does this for me. And adenosine B12 gives me energy. I like that one. You can learn a lot about yourself. Being patient is tough, though, for a lot of people. They want to go with 10 bottles and just start them all. And it is really hard to go one at a time. Yeah. But like I said with my son, it was one at a time over 2 years with never going backward and just watching the symptoms fall away. So it's pretty exciting when you start to see it happening with your loved ones.
I think exciting is a huge understatement for that process, and to see it unfold. Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty wonderful.
Wow. And then you had the ability to complete this book. Yeah. I'm writing a book myself, and I see that you've put this all together. And how did you... That is such a journey. That is such a process. Yeah. That is so much. How did you even begin to formulate, where to start? How do you know where to start? Yeah. I mean, I guess in your scenario it was like a 1 day, but you did talk about before.
Yes,
right?
I did. I started from, See? It kind of goes it goes in and out. But I just knew I had to tell a story and tell it brutally honest and not leave anything out, which it was funny. My husband's like, you've got to take out some of those hospitalizations. It's just too much. And I was like, but then I want the reader to feel the agony we felt at another one and another one and another one. Yeah. I wanted them to go, seriously again? I wanted them to be as angry as I was angry.
Right there with you.
I didn't want to take them out. I wanted them to feel it all. So, I knew I needed to tell a story. It was wonderful. My husband let me retire in 2014 from out at Hanford so that I could write the book.
Really?
And so it took me 2 years. I don't think I'm a great writer, but I knew I had to tell our journey.
You had a story.
And I told it in first person as if you're walking beside me during each of the events instead of, looking back. It's like you're with me each episode, and then I needed to show how if you want to try it for yourself, in a high level, because I didn't want to redo Yasko's stuff. She's brilliant. And so, so my husband allowed me to just take that time and write the book. And so I self-published. It's out on Amazon. Yeah. And so, and
you
the
learned. Link is in the description, so anybody watching can go look at that.
Yes. And so, Create Space, that's Amazon's site where you do paperbacks. And then they have KDP, which is ebooks. And so it's an ebook. So you have to format everything all new for each version. So I learned a lot during that process.
These projects just force us to learn a lot.
They do.
Technology
They
and
do.
formatting.
They do. Yeah.
But it's here and it's brilliant and
Yeah.
it's wow.
So it's been, and he's doing wonderful.
That is so
He's
awesome.
doing great. Yeah.
So we've got this. So what's next? You're doing your classes. You're
Yeah.
talking about the process and
Yep.
nutrients with people.
Yep, I teach
and
2 classes a month. I teach my seminar on a Saturday. It takes 3 hours, and it kind of it just lays out what methylation is. It's so much more than we can cover here.
Yeah.
And you know, if you think you want to test it, here's some testing options, and there's like 5 of them out there. And I show people what they get for their money, depending on which one they pick. And yeah, it's great. And then I do a work group each month. So if somebody wants to try to build their own protocol and create it all by themselves, I try to teach them how they can do that on their own.
Nice.
Like what I did, yeah.
Nice.
I was lucky I had microbiology, I had a lot of chemistry, and so
That coupled
that
nicely.
helped. That helped when it came to finding Dr. Yasko's research. She started with adults with neurological conditions, which is what I had. And then a mom brought her autistic child in and wanted to know, can you do what you're doing for my autistic child? And she was able to bring speech back and in a public school. And yeah, so I went to her conference in 2012, and there was an Italian doctor that came over for her conference, and he brought her just a ton of roses. He was the one whose child she had helped recover. And I just sort of sat in the conference thinking, you know, there's some hope.
Yeah.
You know, there were all kinds of people there fighting all kinds of illnesses, and I was just hearing story after story of people starting to mend and starting to find recovery. So it gave me a lot of hope not to give up, and it wasn't an easy journey. I don't know if I would do it again.
Yeah.
You know, I look back, I think, would I have had children if I would have known what 2 decades were going to be like? Would I have had children? And probably
But that's why we don't know.
not.
That's why we don't know
I know.
these things, right?
I know. And what I tell people who are thinking about conceiving, and maybe they have mental health in the family or spina bifida or anything like that, I always tell them, test your DNA, look at your methylation genes, and start supporting the pathway for a good year before you try to conceive. And that way, you know, you've really got cellular function dialed in and supported for a better pregnancy outcome. You know, but you're also looking, remember the 3-legged stool, you got genetics, pathogens, and your environment. You know, address all that, mom and dad, for that year.
So prenatal-wise, would that just support mom in the process, or will it support baby too?
Well, so you want mom and dad both doing it, because then when, you know, the egg and sperm come together, you've got healthy, you know, you're both got methylation dialed in, and you've got really healthy expression in your genetics and your cells coming together to start forming that baby. And then, of course, the mom would stay on prenatals and stuff. So I always tell people it's not just mom that's responsible. You know, so mom and dad.
Job to dad.
Yeah, mom and dad's both work on it, and then that gives people a lot of hope that okay, so maybe I don't have to have as much fear if I stay proactive for a good year and implement nutrients in and look at my dietary habits, or you know.
There's
alcohol
already
use. There's
so
much.
many unknowns when having kids. At least you can start them with some good DNA.
I remember when I was first in my 20s, I remember my dad saying, I started having health issues towards MS. And I remember my father saying, you know, it's your diet. It's really your nutrition. And I remember rolling my eyes at him.
Okay. Yeah.
And now here I am. He's long gone. I'm thinking, oh, if he only knew how right he was, that it was nutrient based. You know, if you can tackle nutrient support with foods, how ideal would that be? But a lot of people don't have the patience to look up, you know, sulfur containing foods, and if you need to remove them, you know, get them out. A lot of people don't want to invest that much time, but if you knew foods high in zinc or foods high in magnesium, and you knew what nutrients would be best for you, how ideal if you could, by nutrients targeting or by food targeting the nutrients you're trying to get.
So this is what somebody needs to create then, a program
They
where
do.
you put it all in and it spits out options for you.
Yeah, these are the nutrients I need.
Yeah.
And then it tells you, okay,
the
here's the foods. And
Yeah.
then that way you're buying food already.
Yeah.
Do it food-wise. But, a lot of people say you can't, if you need folate, you can't eat enough salad in a day to help your need.
Well, that's when you get those supplements.
I don't know. I don't know if that's true and for everybody. Maybe some people, yeah, but maybe somebody who's not severely impacted there and a couple, 2 or 3 salads a day might make your need. It's hard to know. We can't rubber stamp everybody.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, that way you could try to help methylation and not buy the supplements if you don't have the money.
Right.
Target your foods towards the nutrient need.
Yeah, and
that'd be a lot of work.
That would be a lot of work.
We need to find somebody to build that
yes,
site.
we do need somebody to build
We
that.
do.
So if anybody out there listening that knows how to build that, you should do that.
You should do that. You should do that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I also was reading through some of the stuff that you gave me, and you are venturing towards possibly doing podcasting yourself.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
So I rent office space at Fuse in the Parkway, and they have a podcast studio. So I would love to start podcasting, maybe do my seminar on 3 different podcasts so that people anywhere could watch it and not just be bound to Tri-Cities.
Yeah.
And then maybe start interviewing people who have recovered their health or have gone through the process or even partway through, or even people who tried it and it backfired and they got worse. What did you find out? Was it pathogens that weren't dealt with? What rock didn't we turn over and look at prior to adding in supplements?
I think that'd be a great way to just document.
Right.
Huge documentation tool, huge research tool. So
it would be wonderful. I had a client who was a catatonic schizophrenic, and he was just 2 nutrients in when he was no longer catatonic. And by 4 months in, he actually got on a train here and went to Oregon for Christmas. And I was just stunned when I heard that story. It took us 2 years to get there.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? I think I even told her, shut up. It was just like, I can't believe that journey that he has already been on in just such a short length of time. So for some people, it's like really powerful fast.
Yeah.
And for my son, it was better and better and better, but it took 2 full years.
Yeah. But still, the progression process was probably just the relief that was coming in.
Right. And what he did, at 14, I always thought, what did he do that triggered this? Because, 0 problems, and then all of a sudden chaos.
Yeah, did they give you any information on that?
And I always figured it was puberty, maybe the hormone shifting.
Maybe.
But he also was in with a not a great group, and they would leave the school campus and smoke and drink alcohol, and then also marijuana. And so to me, when I later saw all his mutations and his inability to detox and all that, I thought, environmentally, all those bad environmental choices he piled up with not great methylation genetics to just collapse his system and not be able to handle it. It's kind of what I feel like probably happened.
Yeah.
And he kind of felt like the marijuana was like the last straw.
Really?
Yeah. So it was interesting because, I know marijuana is legal now, and a lot of people are using it for a lot of great reasons, pain or helping cancer patients get their appetite back.
Right.
But I always warn people, from research I found later, people who have the COMT gene that are double mutated and use marijuana, they have a 20% higher schizophrenia risk.
Really?
And so looking at the molecule of marijuana, there's 4 methyl groups on that molecule. And I just wonder if the people who trigger mental illness, are they the ones that can't handle that methyl load?
Yeah.
And are they using marijuana 2, 3, 4 times a day? And they can't clear that methyl, and they tip themselves over into mental health struggles.
Yeah.
Or are they somebody who clears methyl great, and they smoke marijuana and they feel calm and there is no issue?
Yeah.
It seems like it's either one way or another.
I agree. Yeah. I see that some people are just fine, and other people are saying, no, that did not.
The paranoia hits pretty fast, and they go down a rabbit hole. Yeah, and I think it's interesting. It's kind of like what Yasko talks about. Can you clear methyl? On your, what is it? Is it the methyl load that puts you at risk? So we'll find a lot more of that out as the years go by.
I was going to say,
there's so much we don't know.
Right, I'm excited to see the progression and all the research kind of come together, so that way we can continue using this to do awesome, amazing things and to help people heal.
Right.
It's all about healing,
It
you know?
is. Right.
So, I think that, do your podcast.
Yeah.
Get those people in there.
I know,
Get
I
them
need
talking.
to. I'm just not good
Get
at
'em
equipment,
talking.
It's like,
Oh, gosh.
do what? Push a button here? Someday, maybe. I'd like to this year.
Yeah.
My goal is to get it done this year.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, from what I understand there at Fuse, they've got it all set up.
They do.
And so
Yeah.
all the equipment's there.
Yeah.
Unlike my processor, I'm just like, I know nothing about doing podcasts, and we're
Yeah.
just going to do this, and we're going to, like, get some equipment and see how it turns out.
Yeah. Give it a try. I know. You can always not put it out there if
That's
it's
true.
bad.
That's true. I'm like, nope, scratch
Yeah.
that idea.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So I'm so excited that you came in and you gave us a little bit more information on how this works, and also letting people know that there are classes that they can go to get all of the information on all the different nutrients and the methyl pathways and all of the things. And definitely we want to read your book. The link is in the description. Also, all Diane's contact information is there as well, so if you want to get a hold of her. And thank you.
Yes, you're
Thank
welcome.
you for
Thank you for
coming
having
and chatting.
me. I had fun. That was great.
Good. I'm glad. Thank you all so much for listening. If you would like to help support Unraveling with Rayne, go to patreon.com/unravelingwithrayne. When you become a patron, you receive bonus content such as behind-the-scenes footage, along with other special content that you won't be able to find anywhere else. Music for Unraveling with Rayne was provided by Barefoot Randy. Studio space was provided by Moody Logic.